Here's a clean and natural English translation of your story. The man in black in first class. The day started as usual. The plane flying from Los Angeles to Tokyo was smoothly cutting through the sky. On that day, the passengers in first class were going about their business as usual, some sipping coffee, others working on their laptops. Suddenly, the door opened, and a man dressed in black stepped into the cabin. Simple, yet walking with confident steps. The man was none other than Keanu Reeves. Without a word, he took a seat in the empty spot among the businessmen in expensive suits. He paid no attention to the wealth around him, the gold watches or the luxury meals. He simply removed his hat and thanked the smiling flight attendant. The people nearby immediately turned their attention to him. Some recognized him right away and stared in amazement at his appearance. Is that really Keanu Reeves? Thoughts rippled around the cabin. But he ignored everyone, ended a brief phone call, and gazed out the window. When the flight attendant respectfully brought him coffee and asked, "Sir, what would you like?" he smiled and said, "Just water will be fine." His simplicity and politeness revealed the true difference between the social layers within first class. Keanu might be a famous man who had earned millions of dollars, but he never considered himself above others. The businessman next to him smiled, admiring his modest nature. The two briefly talked about literature, art, and life. There was no arrogance or pretense in their conversation. After their talk, the businessman said simply, "Sometimes the greatest wealth is simplicity." Keanu nodded and smiled. "You are right. How we carry ourselves, that is what defines us." The plane continued on its course. But that moment became unforgettable for many in first class, because that day they witnessed a true example of simplicity and humanity. The man in black in first class, continuation. After Keanu Reeves took his seat, the flight attendant brought him a glass of cold water and continued serving the other passengers. As the plane ascended and its movement stabilized, the passengers began ordering meals and taking out their laptops and tablets. Meanwhile, Keanu simply stared out the window, watching the sun's rays filtering through the white clouds. There was a deep thoughtfulness in his eyes. It was clear that this man was not just a famous actor, but someone who had seen much of life's many shades and colors. The man sitting next to him was Richard, a businessman in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, dressed in a white shirt and blue suit. He was the founder of an international law firm, on his way to a meeting in Tokyo. At first, Richard didn't immediately recognize Keanu, but from his mannerisms, he sensed the man was famous. Gradually, their simple greeting grew into a deep conversation. Richard asked with surprise, "Excuse me, are you really Keanu Reeves?" Keanu smiled and nodded. "Yes, that's me. But today, I'm just a passenger traveling." Richard spoke openly. "If you were like other famous people, you would have bodyguards, sunglasses, and paparazzi around when entering here. I admire your humility." Keanu replied in a calm voice. "Life has taught me a lot. I have lost loved ones, experienced loneliness and fame. The most valuable thing is not to forget that you are human. Who we are is not defined by suits or bank accounts, but by how we treat others." Keanu shared about his past life as well. He spoke quietly about losing his father early, being raised by his mother alone, living through various hardships, losing a sibling to illness, and the tragic fate of a loved one. His words carried both sorrow and strength. He seemed to be a man rich in spirit and wise in mind. Richard listened silently. For a while, he forgot about the business world and digital accounts and reflected on human values. Then he quietly said, "Sometimes I realize that I've been judging my life only by achievements and metrics. After talking with you, I want to pause and rethink." Keanu chuckled. "We are all just human. True success in life is being kind-hearted, forgiving, and living simply." The plane slowly approached Tokyo Airport. Flight attendants gave the final announcements. Keanu stood up, picked up his small backpack, and shook hands with Richard as they said goodbye. As he neared the exit, the flight attendant quietly whispered, "Mr. Reeves, everyone who flew with you today will disembark feeling different. You have made a change." Keanu smiled gratefully and stepped off the plane. Behind him, the passengers continued talking about his humble and profound humanity, for a long time. That day was just an ordinary flight. But the behavior of one man on that flight changed the worldview of everyone in first class. Wow, isn't it hard to be that kind of person in life? The wind of change. After the plane landed in Tokyo, the passengers slowly began to disembark. Unlike others, Keanu did not wait for his luggage. He only took his modest backpack and walked through the terminal as a simple passenger. No one greeted him at the airport. This trip was neither official nor commercial. It was either a personal retreat or perhaps a journey to find himself. Leaving the airport, he took an ordinary taxi and headed to a small Zen monastery on the outskirts of the city. He had visited this place before and liked to spend time there for peace, reflection, and inner cleansing. Sitting in the monastery's humble quarters, near the bamboo gardens, he immersed himself in deep thought. This trip was not about filming a movie. It was a journey to listen to his soul, to seek answers to the silent questions in his life. He still carried unhealed wounds inside, the loss of a loved one, loneliness, the emptiness behind fame. Meanwhile, Richard was in a very different state. Richard was staying at a five-star hotel in downtown Tokyo. Normally, he would be preparing for his international meeting, reviewing legal contracts. But that evening, he felt different. After his conversation with Keanu, he couldn't stop thinking. He picked up his phone several times. He gave orders to his secretaries to organize work, but he realized his enthusiasm had shifted. The thoughts about living truly and being human that Keanu had shared didn't just surprise him. They inspired him. Instead of preparing for the day's conference in the hotel's meeting room, Richard closed his laptop and stared out the window. Years of building an empire, a company with branches around the world, but inside, he felt empty. That night, he called his daughter. Elisa, 24, was studying in Italy. They had never been very close because Richard was always busy with work. But this time his voice was warm. "My daughter, how are you? Today, I met an extraordinary man. What he said helped me understand many things. I realize now that I haven't been giving you enough time." On the other end, Elisa was silent for a long moment, then quietly said, "I forgive you, Dad. I have always longed for your attention." That night, Richard cried for the first time. He faced his mistakes honestly. The next day, Richard made a big decision at his company. He announced that he would voluntarily step down as CEO. He chose to remain chairman and give way to younger leaders. This decision surprised all his colleagues. But in his explanation, he said, "I want to see life differently now. We lose so much chasing careers, success, and numbers. I want to spend time with my family, focus on my health, and be close to nature." A few days later, Richard went to the monastery as well. He had researched online and found a Zen place where Keanu had stayed. Upon arrival, he found him in the garden outside. They met again. Richard smiled and said, "I came looking for you. My life has changed." "Thank you." Keanu smiled upon hearing this, but didn't answer immediately, gazing quietly at the bamboo grove. Then he spoke softly. "Each of us has our own journey. Sometimes just one conversation can change a whole life. But the decision must come from within." The two sat talking in the garden for a long time. It wasn't about fame or wealth, just about life, the meaning of existence, forgiveness, and finding oneself. This was the beginning of a new life sparked by their meeting. Keanu went on his way. Richard rediscovered himself. And that meeting on the plane, though it seemed like an ordinary moment, left an indelible mark on their hearts. Cleansing and return to life. Elisa, Richard's daughter, grew up living with her mother. Her relationship with her father had always been distant. After her mother left them, Richard threw himself into work and paid little attention to his daughter. He loved Elisa, but did not know how to show it. Often, he justified his career achievements by saying, "I'm doing this for my daughter." But in reality, Elisa needed him to be present, to listen to her, and spend time together. However, after arriving in Tokyo, Richard changed. He started messaging Elisa every day and began talking about his life. Step by step, he began to restore his fatherly duties, small but significant. Soon Elisa came from Italy to New York for vacation, and for the first time, they spent 2 weeks together. Previously, Their meetings had been limited to just an hour or two. This time was different. Elisa noticed how her father's perspective and words had changed. Sometimes Richard would tell her about his meeting with Keanu. He told me, "Life is not a race. Life is a journey. How you travel it. That's what matters," Richard said one day while they were walking in a park. Elisa listened quietly. A smile appeared on her face. For the first time, she experienced true communication with her father. Meanwhile, Keanu finished his retreat at the monastery and returned to the city. But he had one more task in Tokyo, a meeting with his old friend, the Japanese philosopher Hideki. They had filmed a movie together many years ago and later became friends. Hideki was now an honor professor and ran a small philosophy school. Keanu went to see him and shared the worries deep inside him. For a long time, I thought I was helping people. But lately, I have felt lonely and as if no one needs me, he said. Hideki thought for a while and then replied, "Sometimes we shine light for others but leave ourselves in darkness. You have been giving peace to others while forgetting your own peace. Now it's time to understand yourself." These words hit Keanu hard. He remained silent for a moment and then smiled softly. Maybe I need to think more about family, closeness, and real connections. Fame gives a lot, but it also takes away much. That evening, Keanu walked alone through the streets of Tokyo. People recognized his face, but mostly left him alone. He entered a small ramen restaurant on a street corner and ate a simple meal. Being among ordinary people was the greatest rest for him. That night, sitting in his hotel room, he wrote down his thoughts on paper. These notes might later become a book. For the first time in his life, he felt he was searching for an answer to the question, where is true peace in life? Then his thoughts turned to Richard. In that return to fatherly connection, a calm, sunlit morning in New York. Richard had an old, neglected grand piano restored, hoping to surprise his daughter. He had never forgotten Elisa's childhood moments of playing piano. At the time, he was too busy with work to enter her world of music. Now, though it was late, he wanted to apologize and spend time together. When Elisa arrived home, she noticed the piano room's door was open. She remembered being afraid to enter that room. It had always been Dad's office and off limits. But this time light was spilling out, and her father was sitting at the piano, softly pressing a few keys, testing the sound. "Dad, is that you?" she asked, barely believing her eyes. Richard turned and smiled. "When you were little, you once said, 'I wish Dad would play piano with me.' I have time now. Will you teach me from the beginning?" Elisa's heart swelled. Without saying a word, she sat beside him and began showing him how to position his hands. It wasn't just a music lesson. It was the rediscovery of their emotional bond. That week changed many things. One evening over dinner, Richard looked straight at his daughter and said, "I've missed so much of your life. I don't feel like I've been a good father." Elisa remained silent, tears welling in her eyes. "But you're here now, just being present, right now. That's more important than the past." "I forgive you," she said gently. That night, they went through old photo albums together. Richard saw pictures of Elisa as a little girl and realized how much he had missed. He began sharing stories about himself and learning to truly listen to hers. They went on walks in the park, talking freely about all kinds of topics. One day, Elisa told him, "Dad, I'm applying for a master's in fine arts. I used to be afraid to tell you. I thought you'd push me toward a stable career." Richard was surprised but smiled warmly. "Whatever you do, if it brings your heart peace and makes you feel alive, then it's the right path." Those words echoed deeply in Elisa's heart. She no longer saw her father as her biggest critic, but as her closest supporter. They weren't just father and daughter anymore. It felt like they had become true friends. To strengthen their renewed bond, they decided to go on a trip together. Richard, remembering his meeting with Keanu, chose to visit the same Zen monastery with his daughter. There, he committed to disconnecting from technology, work, and the noisy city to fully listen to her. While traveling, Elisa shared something she had never told him. "You know, when Mom left, I used to hate you. You were always at work. I felt like no one ever heard me." Richard listened closely and nodded. "I used to hate myself during that time, too. You forgiving me, that's the greatest gift I've ever received," he said. They spent a week at the monastery in Tokyo. Elisa fell in love with meditation, Japanese calligraphy, and a natural calmness. During quiet tea moments with her father at night, she heard him say, "I love you," for the first time, and it changed her heart. That one week became a source of lifelong warmth for both of them. They forgave, understood, and began to heal what was once lost. On their way back, at the airport, Richard hugged his daughter gently and said, "Every moment I spend with you is the most valuable part of my life. We can't bring back time, but we can fill every day ahead with love." Elisa, with tears in her eyes, hugged him tightly. "Now I believe I have a father, and just having you is enough for me."